Good evening. And as we return to the pastor study this evening, there is a verse that captured my attention several weeks ago in the midst of everything that we're dealing with that I thought would be worth taking a look at this evening. There's no doubt that we've been forced to take a very close look at our culture, how we live our lives, how we relate to each other. Certainly, the police incident in Minneapolis several weeks ago has been a part of that. The fact that Corona is affecting the minorities and people of color so much worse than it is those who are Caucasian, in large part because of underlying health issues that are caused by lack of medical care, lack of access to medical care, just so many different issues that come into play. This is not the first time that humanity has been forced to face themselves. Prior to the carrying off of Israel and then some years later, some decades later, Judah into captivity into Babylon, Isaiah and the prophet Micah have both been prophesying that this would take place. The passage we're looking at tonight, Micah chapter 6 and verse 8, takes place even before the northern kingdom Israel is carried off. Micah prophesies that will take place. And then God turns his eyes on Judah. And he begins to tell, through the prophet Micah, tell Judah what he is upset about, the issues that he has with Judah. As I said, he starts prophesying concerning Israel and Israel's destruction, and then he says, but Judah, you are just as guilty. As he recounts his issue with Judah through Micah, Micah then asks a rhetorical question. What can we do to fix it? We find that in verse 6 and verse 7 of Micah chapter 6. Micah says, should we offer sacrifices? Should we offer 1 year, 1 year old bulls? Lord, would you be satisfied with thousands of animals or 10,000 rivers of oil? And then he says, or should we even join the heathens and offer our firstborn into the fire? And then Micah speaks to his people. And he says, God has already told us what he expects us to do. And in verse 8, he says, he has told us to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God. What does he mean by that? He says, he has shown thee, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? But to act justly. To act justly. That's the very thing that we've been dealing with in our own culture. Social justice. To treat each other equally well. To right the wrongs that we find where we can. To turn injustices into justice, to correct injustices. And to empathize with those that are in different straits and situations than we are in. If we have the means to help impact that, we're to do that. And then he says to love mercy. Chesed is the word he uses there. It literally means loyal love. To carry out our commitments, or to carry through with our commitments to meet others' needs. To show mercy where we can do that instead of demanding retribution. And if we need any example of how we do that, we've only got to look at our own lives and ask ourselves, how many times has God shown us mercy? And especially when we didn't deserve it. And then he says to walk humbly with your God. Interestingly enough, walking humbly with our God is a manifestation of doing justice, or acting justly and loving mercy. Actually, acting justly leads to loving mercy, which then leads to walking with our God. God doesn't ask us to tithe more. He doesn't ask us to read scripture more. He doesn't ask us to pray more. All those are good things, and he calls us to do all of those things, certainly. But in terms of impacting the world that we live in, He asks us to act justly, to show mercy, and to walk humbly with our God. If we can do those things, we will shine brightly in a universe of dim stars that are simply trying to put Band-Aid solutions on problems that are gaping wounds. We can't change the past, but we can certainly impact the present and change the trajectory, change the direction of the future by simply complying with Micah 6, verse 8. He has shown you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? But to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God. Let's do that together, and I look forward to seeing you next time in the Pastor Study.